On August 7, 2024, I encountered an event that forced me to re-examine everything I had held true for the past 50 years. Born in a modest village in Morocco, I journeyed to the United States 25 years ago, and for the last decade, I have faithfully served as an imam at a small mosque in Texas. My existence has been dedicated to my faith and the service of my community. As a married man with 3 children, my life appeared to be one of serenity, order, and unwavering devotion. Yet, deep within, I always sensed an emptiness, as if something vital was missing. I was introduced to Islam at a tender age. My father instilled in me the teachings of the Quran and the traditional values of our faith. Upon arriving in the US, I strove to share my knowledge and belief with my congregation. I delivered sermons and did everything within my power to meet the needs of my community. Over time, however, the fervor gave way to routine. My acts of worship became mere habits, lacking the spiritual depth I once felt, and during prayer, my mind often wavered between the obligations of my congregation and the demands of my family. I felt confined in a life that seemed devoid of deeper meaning. Then, one morning, everything changed while I was on my way to the mosque. The sky was overcast yet promised a calm day. As I neared a traffic light, I noticed a car speeding toward me from the right. The last thing I recall was the horrifying crash of metal and an overwhelming pain that swallowed me as my vision faded to black. When I finally opened my eyes, I struggled to comprehend my surroundings. The darkness I found was unlike any night I had ever known. It was not the peaceful stillness of dusk, but an oppressive void that weighed down my soul. There was no sound, no light, only an overwhelming heaviness, as if I had been completely severed from God's presence. Though this void terrified me, I felt inexplicably drawn toward it. After a time, a faint red light began to flicker in the distance. I sensed an irresistible pull drawing me closer. Even without a physical body, I moved forward, unable to feel my steps, yet propelled by an unseen force. As I approached, I began to perceive screams, not through my ears, but resonating deep within my spirit. These cries, laden with pain, regret, and sorrow, stirred an intense unrest within me. Eventually, I found myself standing at the brink of a vast chasm. Looking down, I beheld an indescribable sight, a massive pit of fire, its flames perpetually rising. Dense smoke, reeking of sulfur, made the air nearly unbreathable, and the agonized screams from the pit grew louder. Within those flames, I saw souls writhing in torment, some bound by chains, others suffering at the hands of grotesque, tormented creatures. These beings, though bearing human-like forms, were horrifically deformed, exuding an otherworldly malevolence. As I looked closer, I began to recognize certain faces among the damned. Their features were hauntingly familiar, sending an icy shiver down my spine. One among them was a man I had known in my youth, a neighbor from a Christian family. Though we had never shared deep conversations, his face was now contorted in pure terror as he turned toward me and let out a blood-curdling scream. I had long turned my back on God, ignoring his presence throughout my life. On the far side of the chasm, I noticed a dark figure emerging. It was a political leader, a man I recognized only from the news. His features were barely discernible, yet his cries were all too familiar. I had sacrificed everything in pursuit of power and wealth. I had shattered lives, and now here I was. Then, moving further along, another face caught my eye. A world-renowned figure, none other than Muhammad Ali. The mere thought of him languishing in the depths of hell was a shock. I had maintained only a superficial faith, whispering his name without truly believing, and that, I realized, is why I was here. As I scanned the edge of the chasm, I saw even more faces, leaders, scholars, and figures once held up as paragons, all admitting the same bitter truth. They'd carried God's name outwardly, yet had never forged a genuine connection with him. At last, I recognized a formidable figure from the Islamic world, Muammar Gaddafi. His eyes were wide with terror, and he lay bound in chains. He had made power his deity. With a cry, he confessed, "I forgot the true God, and now I am condemned to this darkness." These visions shook me to the core. The souls before me were not only those who had completely rejected faith, but also those who had embraced it only shallowly. The realization filled me with a deep-seated dread. From the depths of the abyss, a whisper echoed, "This is a place with no escape. Here, there is no hope." Every path was sealed shut. In that instant, a profound fear took root within me. My soul felt utterly trapped in the darkness. I yearned to flee, yet there was nowhere to go. Standing at the very edge of the chasm, I was left with nothing but fear and regret. I soon understood that this realm punished not only with physical torment, but also with an unbearable spiritual burden. As I questioned the origin of these afflictions, I sensed an even darker force lurking, an abyss of despair beyond words. But just when I felt utterly lost, something shifted. A radiant light sliced through the oppressive darkness, cleaving the void like a blade and loosening the chains that bound my soul. From that luminous glow emerged a figure whose presence was both overwhelming and gentle, his eyes filled with infinite love and mercy. It was Jesus Christ. Dragged deeper by the darkness and horror of hell, I found myself in a surreal, otherworldly courtroom. Though it was silent, I could feel the immense weight of judgment bearing down on me. In a sudden, overwhelming vision, every moment of my life unfolded before me. I saw my prayers, sermons, and acts of worship side by side with the good deeds I had neglected, the responsibilities I had brushed aside, and the secret thoughts I'd hidden away. Deep in my heart, I witnessed my own selfishness in helping others, my failure to place my family first, and the mechanical routine nature of my worship. This vision revealed that my connection with God was nothing more than a shallow imitation, formed by habit and the weight of societal expectations rather than true, heartfelt devotion. I cried out in despair, even though I had been an imam, a guide to others, and yet the truth could not be denied. My faith was revealed to be a hollow shell. In that moment, hideous, grotesque beings emerged, carrying heavy chains that embodied my sins and failures. They draped these chains upon me, and I collapsed under their unbearable weight, overcome by guilt and a crushing sense of helplessness. At my lowest, when I felt utterly broken, a brilliant light burst through the darkness, wrapping me in warmth, peace, and love. Slowly, the chains began to fall away. From the very center of that luminous glow stepped Jesus Christ. His eyes, filled with boundless love and mercy, reached into the deepest corners of my soul. "I love you, and I have come to save you," he proclaimed, shattering the chains that bound me. For the first time, I truly experienced the overwhelming embrace of God's love. In his presence, the oppressive weight of hell dissolved, replaced by a liberating sense of freedom and forgiveness. I understood then that the only path to peace was to surrender completely to this love, and in that surrender, my soul finally found rest. Just when I thought I was lost in the endless darkness, Jesus moved closer. His presence was so powerful that the crushing weight on my knees eased and the chains binding me fell away one by one as he leaned down and gently lifted me up. His touch radiated warmth and love, filling a void that I had searched for all my life. His gaze seemed to pierce directly into my soul, carrying endless wisdom, along with a profound mercy and understanding that defied words. In that moment, every defense and mask I had built around myself crumbled away. I stood before him completely exposed and vulnerable, with nowhere to hide and no excuses left to offer. "Jesus already knew everything about you, Ali," he said, in a voice that was both commanding and tender. "I know every deed, every neglect, every regret, every fear. And still, I love you. I am here to save you. This is not the end. God is still calling you," he continued. It is I who will rescue you." His words penetrated the depths of my soul, and suddenly everything I had believed and taught felt painfully empty. My prayers, sermons, and acts of worship now appeared as nothing more than a superficial shell, utterly devoid of the profound connection with God that I had long neglected. Jesus did more than simply reveal this emptiness to me. He showed me what it truly meant to be connected to the divine. Memories of my past began to surge before my eyes. Prayers offered with kind intentions yet lacking true depth. Acts of worship performed merely out of obligation, and even the pride I carried while helping others. Every one of these moments was laid bare to me. But Jesus did not reveal them to condemn me. He showed them so that I might be set free. In his presence, the crushing weight of hell dissipated. The surrounding darkness melted away, replaced by pure, unfiltered light. As I looked around, I found myself in a realm that radiated the peace of God. This was not a physical space with walls or boundaries. It was a place where everything was bathed in light, love, and tranquility. Once more, Jesus met my gaze. "Ali, you still have a chance to renew your life," he said. "Follow me. True peace and salvation can only be found in a genuine relationship with God." In that moment, something stirred deep within me. The emptiness that had long haunted my soul was suddenly filled with his words. For the first time, I experienced true faith, not as a set of empty rituals, but as a direct encounter with God's love, forgiveness, and salvation. I came to understand the profound value of the second chance that Jesus had granted me. My soul, once burdened by the oppressive darkness and torment of hell, now felt liberated, light, and filled with an indescribable peace. Yet, with this newfound peace came a deep sense of responsibility. This experience was not meant solely for my own benefit. It was a call to share the love, mercy, and salvation of Christ with others. The light in Jesus' eyes erased every trace of darkness within me, and in that clarity, I knew what I had to do. I would place my faith fully in him and follow the path he set before me. This was not merely a transformation, it was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my life with Christ at its center. In that moment, I truly understood that Jesus' love is limitless and that he is the only way to God. When I finally opened my eyes again, the radiant glow of his presence had given way to the pale ceiling of a hospital room. Though my body felt heavy, the peace within me was overwhelming. Nurses and doctors gathered around, their faces a blend of shock and relief. Then I heard my wife's trembling voice. Through tears of joy, she cried out, "Ali, you came back!" The doctors explained that I had been clinically dead for 9 minutes. A miracle, they said. While they described it as a medical phenomenon, I knew it was far more profound. It was my salvation, my spiritual rebirth, a new beginning. I realized that not only had I been physically revived, but I had also been granted a new spiritual life, one firmly rooted in the truth of Jesus Christ. In the days that followed, as I lay in my hospital bed, I reflected deeply on all that had transpired, the darkness of hell, the torment, the suffocating chains of my past, and then the rescuing, radiant light of Jesus. It wasn't just my life that had been saved. My soul had been rescued, guided into the true love and mercy of God. This realization stirred something within me that could not be ignored. For most of my life, I had been so preoccupied with fulfilling the outward duties of religion that I had neglected the deeper, more vital aspect, a real, personal relationship with God. The echo of Jesus' words, "I love you and have come to save you," resounded within me. That divine love was not meant solely for my benefit. It ignited in me an undeniable duty to share it with others. Upon my discharge from the hospital, I realized that I could never return to the life I once knew. My first act was to focus my attention on my family. I began to view my wife and children not as obligations, but as treasured gifts from God. I approached them with a tenderness and compassion I had long neglected. I started sharing the story of Jesus' love with my children in simple, heartfelt ways. At first, my wife was taken aback, even hesitant, but gradually the peace and love that radiated from me began to soften her heart as well. The next step proved even more challenging, returning to my congregation. For years, as an Imam, I had preached Islam and guided others in living faithfully according to its teachings. Yet my profound experience had shaken the very foundation of all I once believed. How could I reconcile the truths I now embraced with the doctrines I had long espoused? How could I possibly explain to my community that my encounter with Jesus had completely transformed my understanding of God and faith? Initially, I chose silence. I continued to lead prayers and deliver sermons, but every word felt hollow, for I knew I was no longer the man I had been. Driven by an insatiable hunger for truth, I immersed myself in the teachings of Jesus Christ, reading the Bible and exploring Christianity with a fervor I had never known before. The more I read, the more everything began to make sense. The Gospels unveiled a love so profound, a forgiveness so complete, and a grace so undeserved that I recognized it as the ultimate truth. I came to understand that my past religious practices, though well-intentioned, had been missing the essential element of a personal relationship with God. They had been dominated by ritual and obligation. I realized that true faith was about love, connection, and surrender. Jesus had shown me what it meant to truly know God, and I could no longer ignore that revelation. After months of prayer and study, I made the heart-wrenching decision to step down as an imam. Continuing in that role would have been a betrayal of the truth I had discovered. I shared my decision with my wife, who by then had witnessed my transformation. Though initially shocked, she supported me, understanding that this choice came from the depths of my heart. Since leaving my role as an imam, my life has revolved around Christ. Every morning, I now pray not out of obligation, but with love and gratitude for the mercy and grace I have received. I no longer bear the heavy burden of my past mistakes, for I know that Jesus has lifted that weight from my shoulders. I feel a freedom and peace that I never imagined possible. My journey is now one of repentance, transformation, and sharing the boundless love of Christ with others. I devote my days to helping those in need, spreading the message of the salvation found in Jesus. My worship is no longer a mere ritual. It is an outpouring of my love for God. I have come to understand that God's love transcends all boundaries, and that no matter how lost one might feel, Jesus is always there to rescue them. My mission is to share this transformative love with as many people as possible and to live each day as a testament to the grace and mercy that saved me. This is not just a transformation, it is a daily renewal, a fresh beginning, and a calling I will follow for the rest of my life.